Hey guys, today's guest is Tim Noetzel, who is a freelance web designer. He's also been a CEO, a UX UI, project manager, and a whole bunch of other things. Very established individual, and we'll be talking about a lot about design, what tools to use, what skills you can learn, freelancing, being a freelance designer, design versus development, a lot of things like that. We'll also be talking about his course, which is completely devoted to helping you get a job in the tech industry or tech space, whether it's development, design, project management, all of that, which is cool because a lot of courses out there only talk about skills, and it's a skill in itself to get hired, and it's really hard when you're at a junior level, and something we talk about as well. The description for that will be, or the link will be in the description. I hope you guys enjoy this. I really enjoyed talking to Tim, and I'll probably have him on in the future. Thanks for watching.
Code everything.
Okay, so there's a couple things I wanted to cover today. Obviously, we're gonna be talking about purposeful, dive in that a little bit, and then talk about your experience and why the course kind of changed over time a little bit, and what you think. Because I get this question all the time: is like, should I be a designer or should I be a developer? And I'm a developer, so I'm a little biased. So I like to hear a designer point of view. So would you mind kind of giving yourself an introduction for people who may not know you?
Yeah, so my name is Tim Noetzel. Right now I'm a freelance designer and I'm working on a project called Purposeful, which is all about how to find really your dream job in tech. But before that, I've led design for a number of startups, and originally started my career as a consultant, which I absolutely hated. I was traveling 4 or 5 days a week to glamorous places like Poughkeepsie, and really just wasn't enjoying it. So I quit. I started my own startup. We designed one of the top apps in the App Store, but the business itself just wasn't making a ton of money, and that really kind of made me step back and sort of reevaluate my career as a whole and just kind of what I wanted to do. A little bit more thoroughly, and I kind of didn't want to take another job that I wasn't going to absolutely love. And so that's sort of how I got into design, was really just kind of thinking about what would make me happy, and kind of analyzing that. And I was basically like broke at the time because my startup was failing, and I went kind of from broke to having like a fantastic job that was paying well and working with amazing people. And that sort of prompted just like a fascination with how to do that, and whether or not I just kind of got lucky or if it was something that was repeatable. And turns out it is. So I've kind of been coaching people on that as well. So that's kind of what I'm up to.
Nice. And so Purposeful is your main focus right now in working as a freelance designer. Now, one of the things I really liked about it, and like the idea behind it, because to be fairly honest, I have yet to watch any videos, but like I've been looking at the titles. It's all about how to actually get your foot in the door, isn't it?
Exactly. That's exactly right. So I work with people who are really kind of from all walks of life. People who just graduated college and are trying to figure out how to land their first job. I work with a couple of people who are in their 50s and have had other careers and are trying to figure out how to sort of reboot their career and get their foot in the door in tech. And it really is exactly about that. Like, how do you figure out what you want? Do you want to be a designer or a developer, or do QA, or whatever? And then B, how to go get that quickly. Because I think a lot of people think has to be like a multi-year process, and they've got to be great coders or know tons about design. And honestly, that's just not totally true. You definitely have to learn and have to hustle, but there's a way to do it quickly and efficiently, and that's kind of what the course focuses on.
Nice. And it's funny, we were just talking about like people are kind of intimidated to apply when they don't have any resume experience and trying to get their foot in the door, because you have these long lists of like 30 skills with multiple years experience, things
Right.
that aren't even like we want you to have 10 years in Angular 2, and Angular 2 came out last year, or, you know, like a couple months ago. It's like just recruit. But I tell people, like, look, if you kind of meet about half the requirements, or you think you do, you should just go ahead and apply. What's it gonna cost you?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I actually just interviewed a bunch of folks who run tech and design departments at startups, and asked them kind of what their thoughts on it were. And you know, the thing I heard over and over again from people was just that it's really about you and your willingness to learn and your personality and whether or not you'll fit in with the team. You know, way more than what's on your resume or what's on your portfolio. You know, those are just tools to get you in the door. You know, and so you really should think about them that way.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's people don't really put an emphasis on marketing yourself as much as they should, and having a strong portfolio, and like what that even means, right? With people all the time, I say have a strong portfolio, but when you're you know, a junior level dev or a junior level designer and you have no resume experience, how do I do it? How do I market myself? You could have all this great work and all this great stuff to show, but if you don't show it in the right way, you're really going to lose a lot of value.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And it's interesting. I work with a lot of designers and devs, and one of the things I kind of see over and over again, that's just a really big mistake that people make, is really just kind of putting their work out there and thinking that it's going to speak for itself. And you know, if you were the user of a particular piece of design or a particular piece of code, that probably is true. But if you're evaluating it as a recruiter, it's not. Like, they need to know the context, right? What was I able to accomplish for the business? You know, what was the business problem and how did I fix it? That kind of stuff. And so kind of giving that context and saying, like, all right, here was the problem, here's the approach I took, and, you know, here are the, you know, amazing results. We were able to do X, Y, and Z. Really just kind of motivates employers to talk to you in a way that kind of just putting your work out there doesn't.
Now let's jump over to the kind of more of the design, UI, UX stuff. I see you have senior UX designer at a company called WeSwire. It looks like you took on several roles at some point. What sort of tools are actually used in the workplace when you're doing UX?
Yeah, you know, it kind of depends on what you're working on. You know, honestly, the biggest tool, this is going to sound ridiculous, is like a pen and a piece of paper, or a whiteboard. You know, and you're sketching out problems and you know, trying to figure out different approaches, but digitally, all over the place. I'd say most UI designers work in an app called Sketch, which is, you know, it's a vector-based app for Mac. It's basically, if you think of like Photoshop or Illustrator, but just way more streamlined. And then there's a lot of user testing tools that we use. And, you know, sometimes if you want to do something really low fidelity, you'll use like balsamic mockups. But then, you know, at least for me, I also do front-end dev. And so a lot of times I'm working in Sublime, you know, or another text editor. And, you know, so it really just depends on the project.
Nice. Now, I'm looking at your LinkedIn, and you have a very established, like, years of experience. Like, I have no doubt it's much easier for you to get work than probably someone just starting out. So say someone is trying to be a freelance designer, UX, UI, what would kind of be your advice for them when they're looking for work?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of approaches to take. And one of the things that I kind of recommend when people are just getting started, is to go do a couple of quick projects for free. So basically volunteer for some small kind of early stage startups that just like desperately need the help, and get a couple of portfolio items. And I'm talking like, you know, do like a week of like nights and weekends for, you know, not something huge. But that basically, so you get a couple of portfolio items that aren't just like, okay, here's my personal website that I built or this hobby project. And those are great. You should definitely do that stuff too. But if you've got a couple of things where you can say, okay, like I actually worked with this company and get a reference from that company, and you can categorize it as freelancing on your resume or whatever. I think that's just really, really effective. It's a great way to get like a couple of just like quick shots of experience without, putting tons of time into anything.
Now, some people are always concerned. It all comes down to money a lot of times with some people, and it's interesting because I'm a very money motivated individual. I get it, but I feel like sometimes design gets overlooked in terms of, oh, we pay the developers this amount and we always make sure we pay designers this amount. Is that like an individual scale, or is that more general, or you think it comes down to really the individual? Like what's your thoughts about that when it comes to money comparing designers to developers?
I think it totally depends on the individual. I was making significantly more than the vast majority of the devs working at the company I was working at when I kind of first started out. And it really is about kind of what you can bring to the table. And I keep seeing more and more companies trying to hire people who are sort of cross-disciplinary, right? Who are designers who can do front-end dev work, or developers who can design. And those honestly are the folks that get paid the best.
Yeah, definitely. I always tell people, try and make yourself as marketable as possible, right? So I do front-end work, and I actually have video editing skills. So when from YouTube, all that, when my bosses asked if anybody had video editing skills, now I've rose my hand basically, said I can, and now it's kind of, you've made yourself this kind of merged role where now they don't need to hire a video editor, but you can do a little bit there, a little bit more, and you kind of add more value, and you're worth more at the end of the year when your raise comes along.
Right. That's exactly right. I mean, the more value you can add, the kind of, the more arrows you have in your quiver in terms of skills and capabilities, the better for sure.
Now, someone like me who is maybe design challenged would probably be the best way of putting it. What would you have for? Because I love the logic. I love learning. I love building stuff. I don't necessarily have the passion to make it look good, or even maybe the skill set. Right? What would kind of be your advice for someone like me who wants to improve upon that?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, the first thing is to think about it a little bit differently. I was definitely kind of design challenged myself growing up. It wasn't kind of the thing that came naturally to me at all. But I think what changed was because I actually, I got into this field like when I built my first website when I was like 8. And I'm a huge nerd, so it was a Star Wars website, and I was, just totally geeking out. But so I've always kind of had that logical approach to it too. And it's very much, design is very, very logical, actually. It's really just about understanding people's motivations and translating that into something that works. And so, first of all, there's more than one kind of design, right? There's UX design and there's UI design and user testing and user research. And, there's a whole bunch of different things within design. So you don't have to start with the visuals. But even if you do, there's totally a logic to it, right? Like, one of the rules, that you kind of hear pretty frequently is that light comes from the sky, right? And it sounds obvious, and you're kind of like, yeah, what does that have to do with design, right? But when you look at like a button, it tends to be, and this is a little bit less true with flat design, but it tends to have kind of darker edges on the bottom, and so it's like, okay, like, that rule, and it totally makes designing easier, right? And it's kind of the same type of thing. It's like, all right, how to take like a functional programming approach or whatever, right? Like you don't always have to do that, but there's sort of recommended things that you can do, and once you sort of know those, it becomes a lot easier to sort of do visual design.
Nice. Now, the more I look at your very impressive LinkedIn here, I see that you've actually, it seems to me, just by scanning it, that you've kind of jumped positions a little bit. Like, you've done a little bit of everything. Is this something that you think is a good idea for a lot of people, or there's risks but reward at the same time? So like, you were a project manager, business analyst, CEO, then you went into senior UX design, director of product design, head of research and development, and now to freelance designer. It seems like you've kind of jumped around a little bit. Is that kind of a normal path for a lot of people?
I think it is, and the kind of the big distinction I draw is basically that there's a big difference between what your title is and what you're actually doing. And like if you kind of look at what I was doing, really even in that business analyst role, though I didn't realize it at the time, it was really kind of UX and product design. And so sometimes that's sort of titled a little bit differently. And that's a little bit, that's a lot less true actually with developers, right? There tend to be kind of pretty typical roles. But as long as you can kind of tell a cohesive story about your career, and this is totally applicable to developers too, it's okay to jump around and try different things, right? And so for me, I was kind of able to say, really, and I actually kind of just said it. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was actually doing UX design, in my consulting job as a business analyst, and I really kind of I continued to get more and more interested in that, just kind of moved in that direction. And as long as you can kind of tell that sort of cohesive story, employers love it. And I actually think it's pretty helpful because it sort of gives some context. And paints you as a passionate person, which employers really want. They want someone who's kind of like excited about their work, not someone who just kind of shows up and clocks in.
Yeah, and that goes back a little bit to what we were saying earlier about it. It's really on the individual to prove that they're not just here to get a paycheck. Like everyone knows you show up for the paycheck, but also like what makes you unique to the fact that like, hey, I want to hire this guy, even. Like, and sometimes they'll hire less qualified candidates just because they're like, I think I could work with this guy because I got to see his ugly face 50 hours a week sometimes. And so you just got to be able to be that guy.
Right. Yeah. No, that's exactly true. Right. Like when it comes down to it, there are literally only three things that employers are looking for. They'll ask questions in interviews in a million different ways, but they really want to know if you can do the work, if you'll fit in with the team, and if you really want to be there. And it's actually the second and third of those three that are the most important. Because they can work with you, particularly if you're on the junior side. Like you can learn how to do the work as long as you're really sufficiently motivated and you really want to be there. And so like that's what people are looking for more than anything else.
Yeah, it's someone asked an interesting question, and I found this when I was looking for junior level roles. I just thought what you, as someone who's probably worked with more developers than myself, what is your opinion about companies that put junior in front of like front end developer or stuff like that? Is because they were asking if it's just a way of paying people less money sometimes, and to me, I definitely noticed that. Is that something that that you have any sort of knowledge or opinion about?
I wouldn't say I have a strong opinion about it. I think it depends on the company, right? There's some companies where like when they hire junior devs, they really are junior, and they've built programs within the company designed to make them no longer junior, right? And so it's kind of an acknowledgement in good companies that like, hey, we are tracking you in putting you on this track to get to a place where you're more experienced and you can handle more things by yourself and be more productive, and we've got the stuff in place to do that. But then for other companies, yeah, it's really just kind of a way to say, all right, you're younger, we're going to pay you less. And I frankly think that's bullshit. And one of the best people I worked with at WeSpire was still in college. And he was one of the best front-end devs I've ever seen. The guy was just fantastic because he cared about it, right? And so to like have him be at a company where like he was just sort of slapped with a junior dev title, I would be really mad on his behalf. So I guess that's kind of my thought on it. Is it really does depend. And I guess I'd encourage people to worry a little bit less about the title and a little bit more about how the company actually treats you. Are you working with supportive and inspiring people, and is the company really investing in getting you to the next level?
Yeah. I mean, I tend to agree. I think you can learn a lot just by like Googling a little bit about a company and seeing what people have reviewed
Oh
about
yeah,
it. Like
totally.
I moved across country from California to Florida without ever meeting the people I worked on. And when I Googled it, the things on Glassdoor were great company, love the CEO, love this, nothing much. I was like, all right, I'm there, let's go. Like,
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. Like tools like Glassdoor, I think are fantastic. You know, you gotta take individual reviews with a grain of salt, but when you're kind of looking at the trend and you can see that like, okay, these seem legit. You know, it's not just a couple of people at the company making a bunch of stuff up, and they're consistent. You know, you know you've got a pretty good company on your hands.
now, are there at least at the I've only worked at two software companies, so my experience is limited. But at least at my old company, we had about 15 developers and one UI UX in the same role. Now, is that something that is pretty common? Where like ratio wise, is it usually very few designers to the developers?
It actually kind of depends on the product. You know, and so like at WeSpire, we were doing behavior change design. And so basically the product was designed to help companies motivate their employees to do different things like volunteer or be more sustainable, things like that. And so because the product was literally design, our ratio of designers to developers was a lot higher. It was more like 1 to 4.
Wow.
And you know, and so you'll kind of see that it depends. You know, if you're working with like a really technical product, like there's a company right down the road from me called Akamai, and basically what they do is make the internet go faster. And you know, so like their ratio of designers to developers is probably like 1 to 30. You know, and so it really kind of does depend.
Now, as a freelance designer versus an in-house designer, what are some things that you think maybe someone might learn working in-house at a company?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the first thing I'd say is I would definitely recommend working in-house for your first job, no matter what, because you're just going to pick up a ton of stuff that you wouldn't, you know, if you're trying to freelance. And so it really runs the gamut. Like, it's great to kind of be exposed to a bunch of different sort of apps and tools. But more than that, I think it's about approaches to solving problems, right? Because the reality is there are very few new problems that nobody's solved before. And so if you can get into a room and sort of talk things through with other people, and not have it 100% on your shoulders, it's super helpful to sort of learn other people's approaches and other people's ideas.
Yeah, it's same thing goes with. I feel like everyone's big on this hype of the digital nomad lifestyle, which sounds great, but when a lot of the people talking about have never had a software job, and so they it's like you kind of need those first 5 junior level years where you're just in there in the environment, feeding off and just leeching knowledge from the senior developers or designers, and then maybe you can consider going down that. You lose so much value as a developer, at least, just trying to say, yeah, I'm just going to work at home the rest of my life and never learn from anybody in person.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It lengthens the time you're going to spend learning everything. You know, because you're not getting kind of that feedback loop.
Now, is that so? Now that you're working freelance, is that something that you're going to kind of embrace a little bit, the digital nomad lifestyle, or are you going to stay kind of local and not travel around too much?
You know, it's something I'm thinking about. Right now, I'm planning to stay local, at least for the foreseeable future. I think it's you know, really for me, just kind of about what's going on for me personally, but also from a professional standpoint to sort of like, you know, get your business going and that kind of stuff. It helps to work your network, and my network's here. So that's kind of where I'm focused. And I also like to be hands-on. So like, you know, going into clients and working with clients face to face is a lot of fun for me. So yeah, I'm freelance, and yeah, I spend a decent amount of my time working from home. But like love to go in and work with clients too. So
yeah, and that's one of the things when I was freelancing as a developer is that I always found a lot of people thought, oh, you're just going to send emails out and you're just going to make phone calls. But sometimes just taking a second to drive to the person's office to kind of seal the deal will get you the job almost before anybody else. And it's a key skill to have, to be able to just say, okay, let me meet with you. We'll talk. I'm going to say the same shit I said on the phone, but you're going to see me, and then I'm going to get the deal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so much more you learn from just like reading a person's face than you can over the phone, and their body language. So like, I think that ability to kind of sell yourself is absolutely huge.
Now, what is I'm looking at the purposeful kind of path of videos and guide here. What would you say people mapping is? I haven't heard that term before.
Yeah, so that the lesson that module, or the module that lesson is all about kind of figuring out what your dream job is, right? And so the whole idea is that there are basically, and this has been validated by a whole bunch of research, but there are basically 4 things that matter in your dream job. You need to be doing great work that you like really enjoy. You need to have a chance to kind of make an impact day to day. You need to work with inspiring people, and the work needs to fit your life rather than the other way around. And so that module around people mapping is all about kind of figuring out what kinds of people tend to inspire you, and sort of what a supportive and inspiring person looks like in the context of your career right now. Because it's basically like, one of the things I've learned is that like your happiness in your work is not like about your personality type, or any of the kind of like high level stuff that you typically hear from like the so-called career experts. It's about the day to day, right? Like if you're showing up and you hate the work and the people suck, and you're working for a company that's doing something that you think is horribly evil or really just boring, it's gonna be a grind and you're just gonna hate it. But if on the other hand, like you're working on really cool projects and you're making an impact on something you care about, and you're working with people who are really helpful and supportive and inspiring, you're gonna want to leap out of bed every morning and go like run to work. And I was lucky enough to kind of find that, but about 70% of people hate their jobs.
Oh yeah,
and I kind of think personally, like that's like a horrible way to live.
Oh yeah. There's nothing worse than hating your job. It's like, if you guys hate your job right now, go into your boss's office, tell them you want to do software, you want to do design, and see if they'll work with you. It's much better than just going into work and collecting a paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, you get a limited number of years on this earth, right? Like, and you're gonna spend 40 hours or more a week doing something you hate. Just like, what a waste.
Yeah. Do you have any opinion on like a lot of these coding boot camps are also offering UX UI design as a 3-month program? What's kind of your opinion about that? I don't know if you've kind of followed up with any of that.
Yeah, so I think boot camps can be great if you kind of want everything sort of handed to you. I think they're great, but they're expensive, right? And so this is kind of a like there's good boot camps and there's bad boot camps, and that's true for development and it's true for UX UI. But the other thing is that you can actually kind of build your own. And that's kind of one of the things that I get into in the course. And so it really kind of depends on what your personal situation and your goals are, right? Like if your goal is to go network with a bunch of people, I think that a boot camp is fantastic for that, because you're going to be exposed to a lot of people. But if your goal is to learn, I sort of question boot camps a little bit. Simply because I think it's really important in the tech space to learn how to learn on your own. You get out of that boot camp, you're not going to know everything, or really anywhere close to everything, and you're going to have to build those skills, without the kind of like laid out curriculum that you would get otherwise. And so that's kind of my opinion. Is I think they're a great way to get started. Some of them are better than others, but the biggest thing is knowing how to learn and being able to sort of push yourself.
Nice. Was there anything that you wanted us to make sure that we covered?
Yeah, I mean, if I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about kind of the course in general,
Yeah.
but you know, the course is called Design Your Dream Job, and it's really all about how to land a job you love in tech. You know, it's as Dylan said earlier, about getting your foot in the door. But also, if you're not happy, if you're already in tech and you know you're a senior developer, but you're not really enjoying your job, you know, it's also for those people too. You know, and so it basically takes you through, you know, exactly what you need to do to sort of figure out what kind of job is going to make you happy, build the skills you need to get that job, and then go market yourself and land it. So, you know, it's check it out. I think it's a really good resource. I've been getting fantastic feedback from people looking to learn how to be developers or how to be designers. So yeah, that's kind of my little pitch. I'll leave it at that. I hate selling, so I'm kind of, you know, like, if this is valuable, you know, love to talk, and if it's not, you know, how can I help? But that's what the course is.
So what I particularly like, I like the idea of the course in itself, because I think there's very few courses. There's tons of courses that are going to take your money and going to basically teach you something that someone on YouTube teaches you for free, right? There's like so many JavaScript things, but there's very few things out there to teach you how to actually get a job, right? If no one sat you down and said, this is where you need to look, this is where what you need to do, and these are some things that will help you get more hireable. And that's kind of just like the way you break up the modules, right? So map your fit. Why, like 70% of people hate their jobs. So the first section is, let's make sure that the job you're looking for, you're not going to hate, right? That's really what I imagine this first section to be. The next one is, what skills do you need? Right. What skills do you need to get that job, right? Build these skills up, and what skills are employers looking for? Like, crucial thing. So first step one, let's make sure we're not going to hate the job we're looking to. Step two, let's make sure that now that we know the job that we want, skills we're going to do. Step three, finding the right opportunities, and, you know, going about. A lot of people like, where do I look for jobs? They're looking for junior devs, junior designers, whatever it may be, project management. Step four, actually getting the interview and what to do when you do that. And, you know, step five, landing the interview and how to do that. Because a lot of people, they can be the most accomplished developer around, and then before you know it, they go in and they're just like, yo, man, I gotta get the fuck out of here. And everyone's uncomfortable, right? And as we were talking about, it's not necessarily always about your skill level. It's, can I work with this guy on a team? Because you're going to be working as a team. And that's really what I've always liked about this course, is it teaches you how to get your foot in the door, how to get the job you want in a tech environment. So it's very, very specific to that, but really you can apply this to almost anything.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. It really, you know, there are sort of transferable skills for sure, right? Like, landing a job is first and foremost a skill, and it's kind of ridiculous that, like, schools don't teach you how to do that, right? Like, you graduate college and you're kind of like, what am I supposed to do now? And they especially don't teach you how to figure out what you want to do with your life. And, you know, and so this really is kind of about teaching that skill that you're going to use over and over again throughout the rest of your life. And I think people don't really kind of stop and think about how much of an impact that kind of makes on your life and your day-to-day happiness. You know, being able to get a job at a company that's flexible, that lets you work from home, you know, or if you've got a family or want to have a family someday, gives you the sort of flexibility to do those kinds of things. You know, the salary you make, all of those things really center around how well you market yourself, and that starts with understanding what you really want. So that's kind of what the course is about.
Cool. All right, so we have some good questions here. Question is, do you feel one should pursue design and development at the same time, or like creating a balance between the two, or kind of focusing on one or the other when trying to get into the marketplace?
Yeah, I think if you're just getting started, you should focus on one or the other. But you should know just enough about the other one to be dangerous. And so, like, if you're focusing on design, like, you should know HTML and CSS. You don't have to worry about being perfect at them. But like, you can go to Code Academy and learn HTML and CSS in like a couple of days, right? So so definitely kind of do that. On the flip side, if you're you're looking to be a developer, right? Like, you should know your way around something like Sketch or Photoshop just a little bit, right? Like, go take a $10 Udemy class, right? It's not a big investment, and you'll have a sense of kind of some basic design principles. So there's some great courses out there. Like, there's one called Hack Design that's totally free. That'll teach you kind of some of that stuff. There's another one called the Design for Developers. Just so you kind of know the basics and know why, because what you really want to know is like why the person on the other side of the table is doing things the way they do, right? Like, as a designer, like, ultimately the stuff I design is going to be implemented by developers, right? So I don't want my developers to hate me, which means I want to design things right the first time. And have an understanding of what it's like to be a developer so that they can implement my designs easily. And the flip side of that is, as a developer, you want to have the perspective of like, okay, this is why this person is making this decision, right? Like, this is why this is important. And like, once you have a sense of that, it makes it a lot easier to sort of work with your colleagues.
Was there any books or any sort of inspiration material that kind of kept you on course when things got frustrating as a designer, or anyone trying to get into the job market? Anything in your personal life?
Yeah. So as far as books go, I'd recommend a couple. If you're really just getting started with design, there's a great book called Don't Make Me Think. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a really short read, and I'd actually recommend that every developer read it too, because it's really that short and that useful. And it really is all about the idea one of the big ideas in design is like mental models, and like basically how users conceive of problems, and the fact that the product should reflect their conception of a problem, not yours. And really what that means is, like, as a user, you don't want to make the user think. It should be intuitive. And so that's what the book is about. So that one's fantastic. If you're into startups and interested in like design within the context of startups, there's a great book called Running Lean that I really recommend, which is basically all about how to figure out what people want. And kind of go give it to them, which I think is honestly the biggest thing that design is about, right? Design's about solving problems, and ultimately, if you don't understand what people want, your design's not any good. So those are kind of the big ones, and happy if people have individual questions or the specific parts of design they want to focus on, happy to to recommend other books to people too.
All right, the last question: what is the process cycle for as a designer from scratch to being competent enough to applying for your first design job?
Yeah. So I think first of all, you got to pick what type of design you want to do. Just like as an engineer, you wouldn't say, okay, right, like, I'm going to learn everything right now. I'm going to try to learn, to be a front-end dev, but then I'm also going to learn back-end stuff at the same time. You're not going to learn every part of design at the same time. So like, decide if you want to be a UX designer or a user researcher or a UI designer. And then based on that, like, what I basically recommend is go and get an overview. Find a couple of resources that just give a really broad overview. Don't worry about the specifics too much, but just kind of get a sense of what the general practice is. And then go do projects. I think it's kind of the exact same as engineering in that way, that, you're going to learn stuff by doing. So, design your own website, and then, design something for a business. But, as far as the sort of process behind that, from like going from like a blank canvas to a finished product, Usually what I see is it kind of starts with user research. You want to understand people and their problems and kind of what their perspective is. You'll go sort of prototype something, and that can be like what's called a paper prototype, where you literally just draw stuff on paper and show it to people and get feedback, or it can be like a clickable prototype in something like InVision. Get feedback from people there. And, and then it's basically an iterative process, right? So you're constantly getting feedback and improving the product based on that. So hopefully that answers the question.
Hey, well, we got a bunch of knowledge that needs to sink in. Lots of good stuff, guys. Well, thanks for taking the time, man. We'll definitely keep in touch, and I'll let you know when I send this out. Probably next. I usually release one of these interviews every weekend, so definitely. Cool. I'll be making an intro and an outro, and definitely awesome. Have links everywhere for everyone to be able to check out Purposeful. Because I personally think that the hardest thing for a lot of these junior devs, other than confidence, I think confidence is when you're hitting like, hey, I want a job, but I haven't had a job. So it's intimidating. So I think actually being able to get your foot in the door is one of the things a lot of people struggle, regardless if you're a designer, a developer, or anything else. So I really actually like this a lot. And so we're gonna do it justice and share it with the world. Special thanks to our sponsor, Dev Mountain. If you're interested in a coding bootcamp, why don't you check them out, where they include housing alongside their tuition, so you can get up, go, and immerse yourself in the environment. If you want to support me, go over to patreon.com/codingtutorials360 so we can put out more content. Thanks for watching.